Okay, are we ready?
Yep.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Remindful dialogue with two of our directors/co-founders of Remind Psychology Center, Ms. Bhuveshni Rao, who is a clinical psychologist, and Lynette Chai, who is a licensed and registered counselor. Today, we'll be embarking on this journey through this cloud clinic for all things related to mental health. But if you have any questions related to mental health at all, please feel free to drop it in the Facebook live chat.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Terence, for that amazing introduction. So my name is Bhuveshni, and I am a clinical psychologist and also the clinical director of Remind Psychology Center. And with me today, I have the privilege of having my co-founder, one of my co-founders, Lynette Chai here. So Lynette, how's it going?
It's been a long day for us. In fact, because we just completed like a 4 day straight of trainings actually this week, right? It's been a long day. And I was definitely pushing my luck. Didn't come home straight. Went lap out for a while to,
Next.
yes, to relax. And yeah, coming back to this.
And that's what we all do. And then we regret. And that's the whole cycle. Right?
Yeah. How about you? How was your day?
My day was exactly the same as your day. That I had to come home after training and look at my kids. And of course, there's a lot of drama at home. My kid spilled an entire bottle of bubble, the bubble thing that's soap onto the bed. So it's a whole chaos. But right now they are out, they're settled. So I'm here and hopefully be very engaged in this session, right? So maybe you can start with the intention behind this cloud clinic. It's because I think Lynette and I, we get a lot of requests, a lot of questions, a lot of DMs actually based on LinkedIn, social media, and different platforms where people ask us about therapy, especially because they're very curious about it, or they want to know how much it costs, or what happens in therapy, or does it mean that I need to be, totally mentally ill for me to get therapy? All kinds of questions. So we thought we would put together this 1 hour session where you can ask us your questions and we would be here to answer you. And hopefully that will give you an avenue to seek help, whether it's therapy or some other methods of seeking help, right? So we want to start off with just sharing with you something personal to us. And for that, I want to ask Lynette, right? What is your equation with therapy? Have you been to therapy or are you still going for therapy? And what do you think in general?
My first experience of therapy was definitely during my degree days, because we were all asked to go for therapy, right, in order to get your what was that
Hours and stuff.
Hours and stuff. So that was my first experience. It was okay, but it wasn't impressive. So that was my last. Then I actually, like, the proper therapy that I went to was actually just okay, I don't know whether is it something proud to say, it was like 2 years ago.
Okay.
So which means, to answer your third question, I haven't been going to therapy now. But 2 years ago, when I was going through a very difficult time in my life, so I decided to go for a therapy session and to see a therapist. But it wasn't very pleasant though, my first experience. So I must say that I understand how difficult is it for someone to actually take that first step to even contact the center to ask about therapy. So I did that, and my first experience was quite bad, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, right? Because when it takes so much of courage to actually pick up the phone, call, go through the entire process.
And it's not even phone, because now we can just WhatsApp, right? So it was just WhatsApp, but it was so difficult. I have to look through my messages again and again, like, should I click send or not? Yeah.
Okay. And possibly that's what a lot of people go through before they want to actually talk to a therapist. And I can imagine that it's not something easy to open up to this complete stranger.
Yep.
I think for me, my experience was actually the opposite of that, because we had to go for therapy, of course, in when we were on campus. And I think I was lucky that one of our lecturers was the therapist. And I didn't know her at that point. Like, she was one of the panel of lecturers, but she wasn't my lecturer. So we went in, and my friends and I were like, we have no problems. We are really happy people. Right. So what are we going to talk about? But we need the marks, we need the extra credits.
Yeah.
So let's just go. But the moment I sat in and she started talking and I started talking, and then I was having a lot of issues apparently. I was crying and crying. And the funny thing is the exact same thing happened to my friend also.
Okay.
We were very convinced we had no issues in life. And then we started talking, and it was just like, she just opened up these floodgates, right? And now in retrospect, when I think about it, I think the difference why that happened was because I think prior to that, nobody actually has sat down with me and asked me, like, how are you doing as a person? Because it's always about your achievements, right? If you do well in school, you are getting all your grades, teachers are not complaining about you, you must be okay. You must be well adjusted. But nobody actually talks to you on a deeper level and connects with you on a deeper level. So I think this lecturer / therapist did that really well. And just that presence, just being in that space, and her empathetic presence was really, really moving.
Right. And I think that kind of debunk the myth where people have about you must be crazy to see a therapist. And here you are, who thinks that you're completely fine, no problems at all in life. And you went there and realized that no, actually, you really needed someone to talk to. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you are ill, right?
Yeah.
Just because you cry bucket loads of tears doesn't mean you're ill or something is wrong with you.
Yes. I mean, I don't think so. I don't think that crying is a sign of weakness. I think crying is just our body's way of just managing. It's almost like the valve on the pressure cooker.
Which just gonna release it. Yeah.
Release. And so I think it's a very good regulatory system that our body has. And the fact that I could cry that much was, I think, a reflection of how much emotions I had, how much of struggles that I probably had. It may not be clinical, but it was still nevertheless struggles.
What about now?
Now, I think recently I've not gone for therapy per se. Like, I've not gone and spoken to anyone. But the last time I had counseling was when I was getting married. So when I was getting married, I actually opted for premarital counseling. So do like a test and see compatibility, and not compatibility in terms of like astrology or horoscope and all of that, but the real issues that will come into play when you get married, like how you're going to live together, intimacy, families, your belief system, these kind of issues. So there was actually a tool that helps us measure this and see where we fall. If it's true we are extreme opposites, then we talk about that and we manage that. So I thought that was really helpful for me. And I could use that template to actually gauge the issues in my marriage, especially in the beginning stages. And
would you want to go for like a therapy session now? Like, do you think there is a need?
Right now, currently, I don't think there's an immediate need. Right? But if there is a need, I think then it would become more apparent. Like, which then brings us to the question, right? Does everybody need to go for therapy? Is it like, what do you think? Is it like a basic thing that, like in the US, right? Like you watch movies, like everybody has, like, I have my shrink, like I just, so is that what we want, or is that what we should be doing?
Well, it depends if you're asking me as the business owner or asking me as a human being. I mean, as the business, obviously, I would love to say, yes, everybody should come for therapy. It's good for you, whether depending on the severity of the issue, you should talk to someone. But in reality, I don't think so. I don't think everybody needs to go for therapy. But But
So
I
how
think, I just think that everyone needs a way to make sense of what they're going through in life. And therapy happens to be a very good option
Mm,
to have someone trained to listen to your issues, to help you unpack your emotions, your thoughts. And we are very trained in looking at patterns, like patterns of your thought patterns, um, your behavioral patterns, and we are able to identify that. And that's how we break like a chain
mm,
of
mm.
responses, right? So I thought that would be helpful, but not necessarily has to be therapy. Sometimes you just need to drink more water. Sometimes you are just having a bad day. Maybe all you need is just to have a good meal.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be my take.
And also, I think drinking water and having a good meal consistently,
Yeah.
not
And
just
sleep and
sleep,
rest.
rest,
Right.
to
Yeah.
do the basic things consistently to take care of your health.
Yeah.
And I think so from my training, right, as a clin psych, or even when I was doing my undergrad, like I was exposed to a spiritual component in psychology, right? So then my lecturers would, this one lecturer, she used to share that, because we live in an Asian community,
Mhm.
there's actually a lot of different types of help available out there.
Mm.
So, like you mentioned, therapy is one way of seeking help, which
Yeah.
focuses on identifying patterns, and identifying unhelpful patterns,
Mm-hmm.
systematically breaking them down and
Yep.
building that awareness around that, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there are other modalities like spiritual modalities. There are, like all these body related modalities, like, people do yoga and meditate,
Mm.
mindfulness, and all these kind of things. So I think what we want, as even though we are business owners, we are professionals, we're mental health professionals, we don't want to oversell therapy as something that everybody should go,
Mm.
but we want to identify whether this is the right modality for you, for your current issues. If
Mm.
it is, then yes, by all means, go for therapy. If not, there are so many other
So when
options.
you say modalities, what do you mean?
I think, like, sometimes some people get a lot of relief from their issues through praying,
Yeah.
or becoming more involved spiritually, and buying into the philosophical truths
Mm.
of their given religion. They find a lot of peace in that. I've seen that it helps people, kind of like when they go deeper into that, it has
Mm-hmm.
helped them manage their emotions, because they understand like, if someone slaps you, show them the other cheek, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The philosophical way of, karma, or whatever it is. So they have lesser anger because they've learned that acceptance. So
Mm.
that they might think that I don't need therapy, I just need God, and I found God, and I'm
Mm.
fine, right? Or some people who really invest their time into a higher purpose, like something they really believe in, and they do that, and
Mm.
they find that it helps in other areas of your life. So I think that can work as well,
Mm.
right? And so we don't want to say that therapy is the only way,
Yeah.
but I think then it brings us to a question of how do you decide which is the right way for you? Like, how do you, like, for people who don't know, right? Like, I know I have all these problems, but I don't know whether should I go the spiritual way, should I do more yoga and meditation,
Mm.
or should I go for therapy, or should I just talk to my friends? Like, how do you make sense of that?
I don't have a philosophical answer to that. To me, it's just try lor.
Okay.
Because I mean, like, how else are you gonna experience or find or discover an answer without trying? Like, you can have 100 people telling yoga is great. Going to religious what do you call that? Parties, or yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
religious parties.
Not parties, but religious, what do you call it?
Body.
Gatherings.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
gatherings and all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. You can also have 100 people telling you going to therapy is great, but you
All
wouldn't
going to
know.
therapy is bad.
Yeah, all it's bad, but you wouldn't know until you try it for yourself. And don't just try for one. Like for myself, if I wasn't a trained therapist myself, I wouldn't have continued searching for another therapist after my first very bad experience. But because I know that going for therapy is like finding that perfect shoes, or maybe there isn't even a perfect shoe, but at least you need to try a few pairs of shoes. Yeah, the right fit. So because I knew that, and even that, it was hard. Like for me to, experience that bad experience and to then convince myself it's okay, let's try out another therapist. Even that was hard, but I did it, and I'm very glad I did it. And to have found this therapist that I really can sync and vibe with. Yeah. So I think just try.
Okay. So to summarize our discussion so far, right? Like, not therapy can be amazing for you, but it's just one of the many modalities there are. And for you to know whether this is the right line for you, right modality for you, is just simply to try it out.
Yeah.
And
think
see
so.
if it works for you and for the challenges you are facing, and
Mm-hmm.
whether it helps. And I think that is also the catch right there, because when we say like you need to try it out, sometimes people have this perception that if I go there, right, if I come to therapy, I come to see Lynette, and then she's going to magically just cure me.
Yeah, I wish.
Yes. So no therapist is that amazing that we can magically cure you. And if someone tells you that, you should just run right out. Because in therapy, it's not about what the therapist is doing, but it's more about what are you doing to change that pattern.
Okay. So usually whenever I have like a new client, when they arrive, I can tell that they're usually very kanchiong.
Okay. And how can you tell?
How can I tell that they are kanchiong?
How do you?
They're very fidgety, and they don't know where to sit because we have like sofa, right? And you actually get to choose where you want to sit on the sofa, which side you want to choose, and they will be like, so where do I sit? Just very, very jittery lah. You can tell. And the first thing that would usually say is, I don't know where to start. I don't know. This is my first time. I don't know where to start. So I think probably it would be nice. Maybe this is also some of the very common questions that people would want to know. Like actually what happens in therapy? Because I feel like they think that we are doing some voodoo stuff during therapy. Like some very scary stuff going on. Like you can read my mind, you're going to break me apart. So maybe we should walk our audience through
that. Yeah. But I think you just demonstrated that, right? It's not voodoo, but it's just that you are really attuned to observing them. So it may seem like when you tell them, let's say like Lynette shared just now, the clients coming in, and she can tell that they're very jittery, they're very anxious, and you probably know they're really feeling like, what am I doing? I start, they're having all these thoughts. And probably if you actually told them that, right, like, I can sense you're very anxious, you are probably clueless on where to start, they'll be like, oh, you can read my mind. How you know that this is what I'm thinking, right? Yeah. But essentially, that's what therapists or good therapists are supposed to do. To be able to look at you and read your body language and kind of connect with you on a very emotional level, to feel that energy and then reflect that to you. And that is why people think therapists can read minds. Right? But we don't. We read behaviors. And we ask you.
Okay, so let's do a 5 minutes demonstration. Okay. I'm the client.
Interesting.
So like maybe just walk our audience through like what exactly happened in the first part, because the rest of the session is really just the client talking and then the therapist asking questions. And yes, we don't give advices, we ask good questions to help you reflect. But in the beginning is where people I guess it will give them a better understanding of how it would be like. Yeah, so here I am.
Hi, Lynette.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I am okay.
So how was the journey here? Like, how was it getting by? Did you find the place easy?
It was all right. Yeah. The parking was a bit hard at first. Yeah, but I got myself a good parking space. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay, so have you been to therapy before? Like, it's your first time? Okay, and how are you feeling about that right now?
To say.
Mm. And that's pretty normal as well, right? And you don't have to start off with saying anything major. Just maybe to walk me through what you do, your background.
So I am a website designer. That's funny because I'm not. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're a website designer. That sounds like a very interesting job,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It's very stressful.
Stressful.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And what about it stresses you out?
There's just a lot of deadlines upon deadlines, and clients want this and that. And yeah, and my manager just wants me to, complete or accommodate to changes just
Hmm.
because clients want us to. But hello, it's not that easy, okay? You think so easy, is it?
That sounds really frustrating. I wouldn't like it if someone was forcing me to,
Mm-hmm.
changing deadlines. And how are you coping with this?
I guess that is why I'm here.
Right. And probably we'll talk more about that. But I think seeing that this is your first time, I just want to make sure that you know that you're completely in charge of
Mm,
anytime, whatever you feel free to share, please share. If you don't feel comfortable enough to do it, you don't have to.
mm,
Because everything that you share stays confidential, right? And just feel free to just be yourself, right? And if you have any questions, you can always ask me, right? And is there anything that you want to know about me as a therapist before we start?
okay. So that's how we usually start. And we usually also end our first part by setting some ground rules, right?
Hmm,
Yeah.
yeah,
So we would
right.
usually tell our clients how the whole that this entire conversation will be kept PNC, but there are certain conditions where we might breach confidentiality, and what are they? Yeah.
Yeah. So the confidentiality part usually comes out like, so before the client comes and meets the therapist, and this may differ according to practice, like whether you're going to the hospital or you're going to a private clinic,
Mm, mm,
like the intake process. But usually in your first session with a therapist,
yeah.
you can ask them whatever you want to know about therapy. And
Okay.
a therapist should be able to share all of that with you. So everything that you share in the therapy session is going to be PNC,
Mm,
but of course there is some limitations. So to protect the client and to protect you and also people around you,
mm,
if there's any talks about suicide and there's a high risk of suicide or high
mm,
risk of you harming somebody, then the
mm,
therapies will need to be confidential. But other than that, everything will be PNC.
mm.
So you can be, and it's a very protected relationship,
Right.
therapist and the client. So definitely whatever you share wouldn't be shared to your office, your family members, or even your friends. Because people come in sometimes with that fear, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially like we in Remind, we do a lot of EAP clients as well,
Yeah.
which is employee assistance program. We work with companies. And every single time without fail, the client will ask me, will my company know about this?
Mm, yeah.
They the word they use is, I don't want this on my record.
Yeah.
Got that? Right? And actually there's no records because I mean there is records, but the record is for your therapist to keep. So the government is not going to have access to this record unless it's subpoenaed by court, but that's an entire process
Different story altogether. Yeah.
altogether. So for general public, your files in the clinic will not be accessible to anyone,
Mm,
right? So it is pretty safe, right? And I think that is the safety can be a very big concern
mm,
for clients. So after they have come, so they realize that they need therapy, they're coming in, right? And then they meet the therapist, they talk to the therapist and all. And what if the therapist is not the right fit? Like you mentioned, right? The first person was like you didn't like the person at all.
mm,
So what happens if it's not a right fit? What can clients do?
Just clients can choose not to come back, and sadly, the client can choose not to come back and try out another therapist. But you probably want to understand also, what about these therapies that you don't like? What is it that is not fitting to your values? Then you know who to look out for. Yeah, I feel that's important, because we can't, it's just like trying out shoes, right? You know why you don't like this pair of shoes, and what are you looking for? Maybe I want something harder, softer, pointier, that kind of question.
And I think sometimes, depending on the practice, on the place you go, you can actually schedule or ask for like a 10-minute introductory call with a therapist. So in Remind, what happens is the person in charge, the clinical coordinator, would send clients like based on their presenting problem, based on what their issues are, and the demographic of therapists they want. They can tell, I want a Chinese person, or I want an Indian person, I want male, female, young, old, whatever. And the clinical coordinator will send you profiles of people that will be suitable for you. And then you can choose from there, who do you want to schedule a call with? Like a 10-minute introductory call, just to talk, to see if you vibe with this person. Is this person, understanding you? And then you can decide to go for therapy, choose to continue. But I feel like that would be a more strategic way. Like, I feel if I were to go for therapy, that's what I would do, because I can imagine it can be very, very emotionally draining to go through the entire intake with one person, to talk and tell them your problems. Totally. And then I don't want this person.
It's like trauma, like I already went through something so difficult, really susah payah, and finally met this person. And then it's like my first date got ruined. Like, how am I going to go for another date? Yeah, it's very, very similar.
In spite of that, we want you to still try to go on that other date with another therapist.
Yeah.
Find your right fit, especially if this is the kind of, healing journey on. I think that would be really great. So how do they decide? Look, I think for the lay person, right, there are clinical psychologists, there are counselors, there are mental health coaches, there are marriage and family therapists. So there's so many different subsections of mental health professionals, right? So how does one actually decide? Where do I go? How do I decide this? And it's funny that we are having this conversation because I'm a clinical psychologist, you are a counselor. So how do we decide this?
I'm going to be very real now, okay? Honestly, I think as far as therapy is concerned, because it's very personal, I would say go for the one that your friends recommend. Honestly, because you're going to trust that option more. And also your friends chances are that your friend might be more similar to you than all the other resources that you might be hearing. So if your friend thinks that, the one that he or she has been seeing seems to be quite okay, chances of you having like a good fit with this person might be higher. But other than that, of course, then you got to understand what issues are you facing, right? So if it's a marital issues, you might want to go straight to a marriage counselor or couples counselor. But there are also situations where you have a issue with your partner, but you want to work on yourself first. Like you want to understand what is not working currently. Maybe there is some self-work that you need to work on. So you want to see an individual therapist first. That works as well. As for clinical I really think that the work that clinical psychologists are doing and what the counselors are doing are very similar. The only difference is clin psych can diagnose. So maybe Poof, you can share a bit more about what's the deal? With clin psych, like what exactly are you diagnosing?
Okay, so with clinical psychology, right, the first thing we do is, I think our intake process is also very different, because it's very, we want to understand what is your presenting problem, and we are intentionally looking out for signs and symptoms of to actually, see what is the possible problems, to rule out a possible diagnosis.
Right.
So once a client comes in and tells me this is my presenting problem, then we want to go into the history, the family and social history, educational history, birth history, everything, literally your entire life. So it gives us a snapshot view of your entire life from birth till now, till the point of therapy, right? And of course, the bigger focus would be on the presenting problem, like what are they suffering from, or what's the challenges they're facing. After that, we will then identify assessments that we want to test out. So, for example, now we get an increase of adults wanting to be diagnosed with having ADHD,
Right.
or autism. I think that's been on the rise recently, right? So when they come in and they share that I cannot focus, I cannot do my work, and I've been slacking, and I really have attentional issues, and so we look at all the symptoms and we say, okay, it sounds like this person probably has ADHD that was undiagnosed. So then we will come up with a battery of assessments like cognitive testing. Cognitive testing means, simple terms, IQ, to check your IQ levels, to check, to give you and maybe some other people in your environment, like parents or your bosses or superiors or colleagues, tools for them to rate your behavior, what they observe of you. So, and then your emotional parts and all that. So we'll assess a few, like there'll be a battery of tests that we will give you. And based on that results, plus what you have shared, plus our own observation and clinical judgment, the clinical psychologist will come up with a diagnosis. And the diagnosis also, we have like certain codes and mental illness codes and certain way of writing it, and we need to justify it. And then we will give you recommendations of what you can do about these challenges now that we know what the problem is. And then the intervention starts. Intervention
is such a lengthy process.
It's a very lengthy process. So people who actually do not want to get the assessment, right, are not coming in for being assessed with any mental illness, but they are coming in for just relationship issues.
Okay.
They're coming in because I don't like anyone, or I'm feeling really down recently. I've not slept in 2 weeks. I don't know what's happening. Then we will still do a diagnosis in a sense to know what the problem is, but they may not go through that lengthy assessment process because it can be done faster. So it really depends client to client whether you want to be diagnosed or not, whether you want a report or not. Some people just want you to tell them, just tell me what does it sound like?
Right.
Does it sound like I have? And then let's just move on to intervention. So the diagnostic process still happens, but how lengthy or short it is really depends on the client and what they're presenting with.
So for adults, right, what are the benefits of getting a diagnosis?
I think for a lot of people, it's also that satisfaction of knowing I'm not problematic. Like, this is what I do a lot. I'm not problematic.
Okay.
I have an issue.
Okay.
And why this is happening, right? And I think that kind of just lifts up that whole burden they have on themselves. Something is wrong with me as a person. That is why I cannot focus.
Right.
When they know that they have ADHD, then there's like this understanding that dawns, oh, that is why it has been a struggle. That is why I couldn't do this, right? And then they focus on getting better. That helps them. So it kind of helps them get better in the sense that they know what's the problem, and now they can focus on managing that and healing that. Right? So a lot of people, I feel like when they're adults, they want to get diagnosed because of that. Some people, it could be, especially if you have certain personality disorders, and it will really affect your relationships. So they may come in they might see, so I used to work in a practice where we had clinics, we had counselors, we had marriage. So they might go and see a marriage and family therapist, but then that therapist would kind of identify, it seems like one spouse has probably a personality disorder that needs to be worked on. Then they will say, I think we can work on it as a couple together with the marriage therapist, but you may need to go and get individual therapy to manage that part of your personality or that issues that you're having.
That's a lot, right? But also, again, like, how is this labeling helpful? Because I also know that sometimes with that labeling, yes, now that you have like an answer to your problem. You feel more settled. You can be a bit more focused. But also with that labeling, would people go around saying that, yeah, lah, I remember like that lah, because I got OCD ma.
And that is why, and I think that is the difference between talking to your friends for therapy and actually talking to a trained professional for therapy.
Like, why would you say so?
Because I think a lot of people have this misconception, right? Why I must pay so much and go for therapy? I can just talk to my friends, you know? I can just, talk to my family or whoever.
Yeah, lah, they think our job damn easy,
Yeah, it's very easy. You sit down and listen only. Why you need to take so much money, right? But what they don't see is that when we are listening to you, we are not only listening to what you're saying, we are also listening to what you're not saying.
Yeah.
The pattern. So like exactly what you said, right? I got OCD, ma. I cannot do this. You should follow me. That in itself is a very unhelpful pattern.
Yeah.
Because they have this understanding that because I have this diagnosis, everything goes. You should listen to me. So there's a line, like a boundary where you are having these challenges, and then there's this line, this invisible line where you use that as a crutch,
right,
or you use that as a way of getting benefits. Then it becomes very unhelpful. So the job of a therapist is also to call that out in a very kind and empathetic way. So we're not going to be like, hey, you are damn terrible. No, how can you do like this? We're not going to do that. Our job is not to nag you, not to lecture you, right? But we will point that out and say, you seem to use this diagnosis as a way of getting favors or as a justification. And how is that impacting you or people in your life?
Right. Yeah.
Right? And to get them to have that light bulb moment of seeing that.
Yeah, because when they do that, it's almost like therapy is the end of self-improvement.
Yes.
Yeah, but actually therapy is the beginning
Yeah.
of self-improvement, and not using it as a excuse of not wanting to improve or not wanting to, learn how to work with other people.
Forward. Yes, and I've had experiences like that. People will come up to me and say, I have depression, so therefore I cannot finish my work on time. So I need you to write a letter to my office to tell them that. So there's also the way they talk about it,
Yeah.
And I think that's also very important for therapists to zoom in on, like the way you're talking, your body language. Does it show that you are actually trying to fight this, or you're actually using it as a badge of honor?
Yeah.
To get away with stuff that you actually have to do.
Yeah.
Which means it becomes unfair to other people around you. Which will then impact you, because then people are going to pull away and then you're going to be alone.
Yeah.
Another issue.
Yeah.
So I think that is what good therapists are trained to do, and that's what they should be doing. How do you then, what would you say is the difference between, I think with Asian communities, we're very collectivist. Everybody's in each other's business most of the time. So everybody has ideas and everybody has questions and all of that. So when is it helpful to listen to them? And when is it, probably the time to, say, okay, what, this is all their opinion. I want to get professional help.
Well, I think, first of all, I don't think these two should be mutually exclusive, right? Like it can happen the same time. You can listen to them and still go for your therapy. So I think what I like about therapy, and also the kind of modality that I subscribe to, and I really believe, is we suffer when we are stuck in our own mental headspace or an emotional state. Like we feel sad, full stop. Like there is no capacity to experience other form of emotions. So I feel like that stuckness makes us suffer. So even with this idea, right, even with this question that you're asking, when do I start and when do I stop? Why not both? And I feel like that gives us that flexibility, open up more options for us to consider, and that helps us move. And healing happens when we start moving. So even with that as a mindset, I feel it kind of helped people to realize that, oh, okay, I don't have to choose either or. I can listen to my friends and also consider what my therapist is saying. I can experience sadness and I can find this little pocket of joy.
Mm.
At the same time, I'm not all stuck.
Okay.
And I think that is very empowering. So I may not have answered your question directly, but I feel like in short, these two shouldn't be bertentangan lah. You
Okay.
know, it can
So
happen at the
basically,
same time.
you can actually access the wisdom from your family and friends,
Yeah.
and at the same time go for therapy. And I think then it comes down to then you need to decide, right? What is going to work best for you,
Yeah.
right? What works within your context.
Mm-hmm.
Decide what to do about it. There with that awareness.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And that sometimes is not as easy as you make it sound.
No, it's
Right?
not.
So how long does one have to be in therapy to even get to that level, right? Like where you are like, I know what I'm going to do. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. Everything is very clear. Is there a set? Because this is something clients will ask
No.
me all the time, right? Like,
Yeah.
how long do you think I need to come for therapy?
It really depends, right? I mean, I would, okay, for myself, I would say that usually by the fifth session, usually you should be able to see some changes.
Mm.
Okay, you should have gained more self-awareness, and with that increased self-awareness, that should enable you to make certain choices that would make you feel more empowered, and you actually feel better about yourself. You may not have solved the problem yet, but you will feel more empowered, and you feel bigger and not smaller. You don't feel like you're shrinking.
Mm.
Yeah, so I feel like probably plus minus the fifth session, you should be able to see something. But for your question was, so how long does it take for you to see it and then to do it? Seeing it is easy.
Doing is difficult.
Doing it is difficult. So when I told you that I went through a very difficult moment, times of my life, right? I saw it. Like since the beginning, I saw it already.
I know.
But but doing it is hard.
Yeah.
Right. So I was stuck in the seeing phase for like maybe a year plus. So it's not that my therapist was not effective. It's just that I can't put my feet down and make it happen
Mm.
or take that action. So I just want to differentiate lah. Seeing and doing are two very different things. Yeah.
And the seeing and doing, I think your therapist can show you the path, but you need to choose when you want to walk.
To walk or not is your choice.
Walk or not, it's your choice. And you can choose, I don't want to walk. Now I have the awareness. I just want to sit here.
Yeah.
It's too difficult. And that's fine. That's okay as well. And we will guide you until you're ready.
Yeah.
We'll be there with you until you're ready to take the next step.
So what about you? Like, how would you answer your clients if they come and ask, how long do I need? You think, doctor?
I think, first of all, I'll correct them. I'm not a doctor. But second of all, then I would say that I think I would answer very similarly. Like it really depends on the entire process. So I believe that the process is the real medicine in a way. It's not me prescribing, okay, today you go back and you do mindfulness, okay, take deep breaths, sit, then tomorrow your problem magically solved. It's not like that. It's about the process. And sometimes it takes time to even deepen the trust with the therapist. Because it's still a relationship when you think about it. It's a professional relationship, but it's still a relationship that you need to give it time to grow, to trust each other and to say certain things. And usually with time also, your therapist may also build that rapport with you that they can confront you about certain things that other people may not dare tell you. So I think you need to give that relationship a chance as well. But of course, I won't be comfortable to put a number to it because we really don't know. Everyone is very different. How they process things is very different. But so I would tell them to trust the process and just go with it and see if they think that, after 5 sessions, nothing is happening. I don't know anything. I don't see anything. I don't even see a light bulb. Then perhaps, it's not working out. We either talk about it, debrief, see what's not working out, what is not sinking, and work on that. So
Yeah.
through doing that also, they learn that even if they had this kind of issues outside, they can talk about it. So sometimes it's also that process, right? Like that giving that relationship a chance may
Yeah.
become a new template for how you relate to other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Therapy.
Yeah.
Right? So
I can't stop but to say, you know, I trust the process, but does the process trust me?
it does. It does. I believe it does.
Okay. We actually have like a couple of questions sent into our Slido. Maybe Terence, you wanna read it out for us?
Yes. All
Aaron
right.
is
So
my
thank you so
clinical
much.
coordinator.
Yeah.
Hello everyone. Okay. So first and foremost, thank you for whoever has put the questions in the Slido. All questions are anonymous, so please feel free to put in all your questions. So the first question we have is living with depression, especially living with someone who's been clinically diagnosed with MDD. How do you draw boundaries? And how do you feel less selfish when you want to care for yourself? Okay, that's the question.
Okay. And
Go ahead, Miss P.
you for the question. And I think it's very, very difficult, especially if you have been diagnosed with MDD. Probably already have a lot. You probably were diagnosed because of the stress of not being able to draw boundaries, right? People
Yeah.
constantly overstepping your boundaries, and that has been a challenge. And over time, that has built up into affecting your mood and affecting your body physiologically and your mood and all that. And that's where you get a diagnosis of MDD. So I think this question of how do you draw boundaries, I think that is a process by itself. And it's not an easy process, especially depending on the people that you want to draw boundaries with. And usually the people that you need to draw boundaries with will be the people that is the hardest for you to draw boundaries. So it could be parents, it could be family members, it could be, spouse, right? And I feel like it's usually the ones who are nearer to us that we find it very difficult to draw boundaries. And usually it's very connected to how you think about what's going to happen if I draw this boundary, right? And usually we are scared of that outcome, that perceived outcome, the imagined outcome in our head. Like if I draw a boundary, if I say no, then what would happen? We don't know if that's what would happen, but we are scared of that and we don't do it. So I think it really has many layers of it, because we need to understand when you talk about boundaries, who is it for, what context, and we need to answer all of this. But a lot of times we don't draw boundaries. I think it's because of this imagined impact that we think it's going to have, the imagined outcome of it. And we probably want to identify what is this imagined outcome that I am so scared of that will happen. And if I actually meet this outcome, what would happen? And see if you're able to accept that. Because it's about a choice, right? I'm choosing, you either choose to let people walk over your boundaries, or you choose to do something, or you choose to be like, you know what, then I'm not going to see it as them walking over my boundaries. I'm going to see it as something not harmful. Like it's just something that happens. It's just something neutral. So it's all about our choice, and probably we need to see where is our thought pattern taking us to, right? I would say that drawing boundary is very difficult, and we would need more context to know what is that about. But you can start by drawing. I think we don't need to think of boundaries as like either the door is open or it's shut. It can be it's open now, but it's closed a little bit. Bring it closer a little bit.
Okay, sometimes close, sometimes open.
Sometimes closed, sometimes open, right? So we don't need to be very, very rigid in our mind. I think that's a big part of our problems are usually because we're very rigid. It has to be this or that. It doesn't mean it can be any spectrum, right? And so test out the boundaries with whatever you're comfortable first. What are you comfortable saying no to? What are you comfortable saying yes to? Just try it out with the least scary option, and then build up as you go when you get confident. Right. So that's what I would think. What would you think, Ms. Lynette?
Well, what caught my attention when I was listening to this question is how do I what was it? How do I feel less selfish? something
And
like
how
that.
do you be less selfish when you want to care for yourself?
Yeah, how do you feel less selfish? So I feel like the first thing that I would want to address would be you're not selfish for needing space.
Mm.
So if you feel selfish, then that is something that we need to deal with, right? Like where do we have that perception from? But again, it's normal because being Asian, we are raised up in this kind of culture that you need to take care of each other. But I really want to say that you're not selfish for needing space. And it almost feel like what you are saying, if I were to put myself in your shoe, is that if I were to care less for this person, or if I were to withdraw some of my support for this person, that's like a betrayal to this person. But I think it's not true. Yeah, like your well-being is not a betrayal, it's a boundary. And I like what Poof mentioned about doors, because boundaries are not walls, they are more like doors, right? They help you enter into the relationship in a more grounded and sustainable way, rather than a building without walls. Anybody can come in and go out as you wish. So yeah, I just want to again end it with being selfish. It's not selfish if you need space. Yeah, you're not selfish for needing space. And it's also a reminder that I'm telling myself.
Yes. And I think to add on to that, right? But the question says, how do you feel less selfish? I think sometimes, right, because of our learning, what we have been told that we need to be selfless, we need to always put other people first, I feel it's very, very normal that you will feel selfish. Or the thought might come out that, oh, this is a selfish thing to do. And I would say, do it anyway if it's going to benefit your mental health. Because it's not that you're murdering somebody for you to feel better. You are saying no to someone.
Yeah.
To take space to rest or rejuvenate. They may be hurt, they may be upset, but they will live. Right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's also recognizing that, yes, I feel selfish, but so be it, because this is going to help me cope. And I think that's also an important choice to make, and a necessary one to make.
Yeah.
I don't think we should all aim to be saints. I think that's not what we want to aim for. Because we're just going to lose, because we're not saints. But we're trying to be someone we're not, and trying to be the perfect daughter, the perfect wife, the perfect mother. We want to be perfect in everything.
Yeah.
But it's not helping us, because we cannot be perfect, because we're not meant to be perfect. We're just meant to progress and learn and grow. And that's our entire blueprint. So we try to do something opposite that. It's not going to work. So yes, you may feel like, oh, this is a very selfish thing to do. Acknowledge that and still do it anyway, because you are caring for yourself. And I think that's also very, very important.
Yeah. Okay. We hope that answered your question. I think there is a second question that came in.
Yes. So the second question is, as a teacher, how do we advise parents that even children might need therapy? As there's a big stigma on mental health in Malaysia, and most parents become defensive when we mention therapy because they think that therapy is only for those who are abnormal.
Yes. I think teachers, you need help. You need reinforcement.
I think this is a tender territory, especially in Malaysia, where therapy is often misunderstood, right? It's hard for people to imagine a place that I've never been to. So our teachers are mostly probably they have a direct experience of what therapy is, and or our parents even. So it's very hard for if our teachers are not if they themselves have not experienced or have enough understanding what therapy is, it's hard for them to portray the right picture. But I guess for me, a short answer to that would be maybe try shifting the word therapy to a more acceptable bridge, like support space, skills-based coaching. where maybe you want to consider sending your kids to meet with this person to help your kids build some skills which will help them socially or academically. I think maybe would be an easier way to get in.
Yeah.
What do you think, Poof, as a parent yourself?
As a parent, I think I feel some teachers really they really care about their students. And that shows. And how it shows is through the way you build that rapport with your parents, the parents of your students, right? Like how you talk to them and how you word certain things about their child. I think that's really important because parents can get really sensitive about their children. Because especially in our culture, whatever kena my child, right? It's like kena me. So if my child is called lazy, that means I must be lazy. That's why my child is lazy. So there's always this misconception that parents are living through their children. So whatever happened to them is happening to us also. So that is another issue, right? So now parents need to be conscious about that. It is not true. Your child is your child. You are you. You don't have to mix these two. But because of that kind of, entanglement in that relationship, the parent-child relationship, when teachers say certain things to parents, teachers also need to have that sensitivity training in doing that. Not only teachers, doctors, therapists, whoever is working in public sector with people, I think you need to have that sensitivity training on how to say certain things so that the person understands what you're saying.
Right.
Which I feel sometimes it's lacking. Not everyone, of course, but sometimes that's lacking. So when you straight away go to a parent, right, who has all these hopes and dreams and vision for their kids, and you tell them, your child something wrong, lah. I think you better take a therapy. It's, it's very.
I would be defensive.
Yeah, you automatically become defensive.
Yeah.
Like, by God, you don't know. You are just against my child.
Yeah, and my child is okay at home.
Okay at home. And it could be the child is okay at home, but only in school something is triggering the child. And to know how to manage that also, you need a lot of psychological awareness and knowledge on child psychology.
Yeah.
How do you talk to the child? What do you give attention to? What do you not give attention to? So there's an entire chapter of things that you can do there, right? But if that is already lacking, but you go to a parent and say, your child needs therapy directly, it's not going to be helpful. So I think what would help me as a parent, now I'm putting down my therapist hat as a parent, I would love it if teachers had that rapport with me. Teachers recognized, like build that relationship with my child and recognize what my child is good at, what my child's strengths are, like overall. So I already have that rapport, right? So now I'm more likely to trust what the teacher says.
That's so important.
Yeah. Teacher is saying, I notice, your child seems to be doing this and they seem to be behaving this way. And I'm really worried because this seems like ABCD, whatever.
Right.
And that will impact the child in the future. So maybe you just want to go and get a second opinion and, and test it out or check it out. Then parents may be more accepting of that. Right? Of course, there will still be parents who are defensive, they're angry and all, and that will happen. Right? That will happen. And we need to manage that. But I think the stigma is not only about parents not being accepting. I think as society, even as therapists, even as teachers, even as doctors, if our own children were going through something like that, it's still questionable whether we will be so accepting.
Yeah.
It's always easier to be like, oh, that person's child is like that. This person, right? But so we need to take a step back and think, if this was my child, how would I want people to talk to me?
Right.
And talk and plan that out to tell them in that way. And you don't even, because if you're a teacher and you're telling them all about therapy, even if you know a lot of therapy, right, they're not going to believe you. How you know? You teacher only. And it's a very unfair and uncalled for
response. Statement. Yeah.
But people may say that in anger. So I think it's safer if you say and refer them, have referrals and say maybe you can go and meet this person just to talk and see if there is an issue. If there's no issue, we are all happy. And if there is something, maybe you can talk about it, and are we happy to also assist in the process?
Would it help, like instead of saying that, hey, your child has a problem, I think you need to send him to a therapist. Would it be more helpful to say that there's this place where kids learn tools to express themselves better or deal with stress? So I feel like, because parents, like everyone wants to send their kids to learn this and that, right? So by the term learning tools, would that be more acceptable to you? Would you feel better?
So that would also be another thing, because I'm a therapist, I know like what you mean learning tools. But
Susah lah you, I tell you.
because I'm like both, right? So I'm like, what do you mean learning tools? Or rather, you tell me directly. So I feel like when we do this, yes, I get it that it helps people it's more palatable, but then it doesn't help remove the stigma,
Okay.
because it's still perpetuating that I cannot say these words. It's bad. But actually, it's not bad. It's just, another avenue for you to seek help. And this, what you're saying, is okay if it's like they need stress management, they need anger management, that's fine. You can do this. But if the child actually has neurodevelopmental issues, the child really has.
Because I think that's another, a different, yeah.
So you cannot go and tell the parents they need coaching, and then the parents come here and we tell them we need to do all this assessment. They're like, what? Like, I wasn't expecting this, right? So we want to be upfront and tell them what they're looking for and what are the options available. I think that would be very helpful for parents to decide right, what they want to do. And I think there's another question. Parents, is that?
Yes. So we have one more question. Is the answer to better mental health always the opposite of your current tendencies? So, for example, if there are people who tend to avoid things, should they confront them? Or if people isolate, should they join more social events, etc.?
I would say it's not always. So there are certain words we're very allergic to, Words like always, must, should, because there's no always, must, should, can, never, right? Because your situation will change all the time. So that being said, I don't think the answer to better mental health is doing the opposite. It's doing what's best for you in your current context. Because avoiding, right? Nobody says avoiding things, or at least we don't say avoiding things is bad. Because some situations you really want to avoid, because that's the best for you in that particular context, right? And then there'll be contexts where you need to confront and you need to talk about something.
I thought of something funny.
Yes.
Like it's almost saying that or if you want to train yourself to be more patient, you should go and experience traffic jam. Don't avoid it. It's like you're saying that if you want to have a better mental health, in this case, if you want to be more patient, go straight into a traffic jam. And train yourself to be more patient. Takkan we do that, right?
It's not helpful.
Yeah, it's not helpful.
To do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also very time consuming. It's wasting petrol, wasting energy, all of that. So it's not helpful. Therefore, we don't do that. Right? So similarly, whether it's avoiding things or isolating or joining social events, I can tell you, I do not enjoy social events as much. Right? But if someone told me that you should go for social events, you should be out there, the life of the party, I'm very stressed. I got no mental illness, also Jadi got mental illness because stress. So it's not a matter of should or shouldn't, it's a matter of what is helpful for you. So even though I may not like to be center of attention, or I may not like to be in social events all the time, but if it's necessary, can I go or not? If even when necessary, you cannot go. So your boss tells you need to go for a networking event and you like hide in the toilet, don't want to see your boss, just avoiding, then that becomes very unhelpful because it's going to affect your career. But if it's a choice that it doesn't really matter whether you go or don't go, I can go if I want to, but I don't want to go. Yeah. I have to go because it doesn't affect anyone anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Right? I think it's a straightforward no for me as well. It's not as black and white as this lah. It's not always the case for sure.
So I feel like, I think that's a good place to actually kind of like bring this together, that we want, as therapists, we want you to be able to hold yourself lightly
Mm,
for the person that you are, your strengths, your flaws, and everything, your perfection, your imperfections, and also your mistakes and everything that you go through, because that is how life is. Everyone
yeah.
goes through that. And we want to be able to help the client hold themselves lightly throughout this entire process. Instead of being very like strict and rigid and very like it must be this or that. It doesn't need to be like that, right? And I think that is hopefully something that everyone can take away, right? And hopefully that therapy is one way that can help you find that authentic self and live that life, that meaningful life that you want to create for yourself, right? So last words from you, Lynette.
No, I'm just glad that we managed to start with this first episode. And I'm happy that we have questions coming in. And we love to do this more. If you would like us to cover more topics or different topics, even let us know. DM us or drop us a text on our WhatsApp. You know where to find us.
Yes. And if you would like to schedule a 10-minute call to just understand and get more customized answers to your challenges, please feel free to do that. You have our Remind Facebook page. You have our Instagram page, and you can also find us on remindpsych.co. Okay. Thank you so much for your time and attention and your questions. And we hope to see you in the next segment of Remindful Dialogues.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.